because a team is going to trade him. Because when James Harden asked for a trade, no one's going to fight back that James was dogging it his last days in Houston. No, you can't say that. You can't say this, but teams can.
There are many players in NBA history who you could call gifted from the start, meaning that the moment they hit the NBA court, they were putting up big numbers or were making big impacts. Michael Jordan made a splash and proved his worth in his third NBA game ever. Magic Johnson helped lead the Lakers to a title in his rookie season, and so on and so forth. But not everyone is projected to do good and then does good immediately. Thus, when they do show their talent, everyone wondered where it came from and where it was before. So allow us to show you 7 NBA players who became good out of nowhere. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Number 7, Giannis Antetokounmpo. It is very, very hard to look at Giannis right now and think that he was anything other than the Greek freak. But the truth is much more ironic. Mainly in that when he was drafted in the middle of the first round by the Milwaukee Bucks, no one could say his name very well and no one thought he would do very well. His rookie year, it was terrible, averaging just 7 points per game, a far cry from the sometimes dozens of points that he now scores in the NBA. And because of that lack of talent, many felt he might just linger in the league. But thankfully for his team, Giannis knew that he had to improve. So not only did he go and get some trainers to help him out, he got them to bulk him up. So much so that by his 4th year in the league, he had gained a whopping 51 pounds of muscle. That muscle would aid him in many ways that his game now proves. Not everyone is willing to go through that kind of transformation, and yet he did it because he wanted to be valuable to his team, which he most certainly was after a while. By the time of his 7th season, Giannis went from 7 points per game to 30 points per game, as well as getting 14 rebounds per game and 7 assists per game. Giannis became one of the most dominant players in all of the NBA, and he was basically an irresistible force and an immovable object, which in this day in the NBA isn't as common as you might think. He's also the reigning back-to-back MVP of the league and won Defensive Player of the Year last year, so he went from nothing to everything, all due to hard work. Number 6, CJ McCollum. Everybody expected a lot from this guy due to his explosiveness and ability to put up points from pretty much everywhere. But after a couple of seasons with very low minutes due to the presence of other guys, it seemed like CJ was going to stall his development. Nevertheless, at the very last minute, he was asked to take the starting backcourt of the Trailblazers alongside Damian Lillard, and CJ became a huge beast like he was already a veteran, winning the Most Improved Player award during that season and averaging 23 points, 3.6 boards, and 3.6 helpers per game at one time. Number 5, Jimmy Butler. When you hear the story of Jimmy Butler, you're almost amazed that he is still in the NBA, because he was bounced around from team to team. For the longest time, you wondered if he would ever find a team that would be able to tolerate him, mainly because he had a habit of calling out other players if he felt they weren't living up to their potential, and even cussed out the Minnesota Timberwolves GM once because of it. Ironically, he had 2 out-of-nowhere spots in his career. The first was with the Bulls, who drafted him specifically for his defensive presence and not his scoring ability. But in the 2014-2015 season, he exploded and became an all-star. He bounced around from team to team until eventually, last season he ended up with the Miami Heat. He was expected to do okay there, but instead he did legendarily there. So much so that the Heat went from contenders in the Eastern Conference, in some people's minds, all the way to the NBA Finals. Something no one expected them to do with Butler at the helm. But they did it, and though they did lose in the finals, Butler sent a message that he was still legit and that people should respect his abilities. Number 4, Jeremy Lin. The story of Jeremy Lin is a very curious one, especially given how he well and truly came out of nowhere to go and make everyone believe in Linsanity. Jeremy Lin played at Harvard College and was well and truly a star there, but when he entered the NBA draft, he didn't get picked up by a single team. Eventually, the Golden State Warriors would pick him up, but they repeatedly sent him down to the D-League. After that, he got picked up by the New York Knicks, and everything came together for a time. Because in February of 2012, he started to put up big numbers for the Knicks and easily became the biggest thing in the NBA for a while. He was going up against bigger and better teams and was crushing them, including going up against the late Kobe Bryant and outscoring him in a duel. True, Linsanity didn't last and he bounced around from team to team, but he did make impacts and he proved that he was worthy of being in the NBA, and that is what matters. Number 3, Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah Thomas was literally the last player taken in the 2011 NBA draft, going 60th overall. He was drafted by the Sacramento Kings after such names as Targai Ngumbo and Adam Honga, both of which never stepped foot on an NBA court. Most overlooked Thomas because of his height, coming in at 5'9", and the fact that he's more of a scorer than a facilitator. Now, despite all of this, Thomas ended up forging his way into the starting lineup with the Kings by the middle of his rookie season, averaging 11.5 points and 4.1 assists in 25.5 minutes per game. Since then, Thomas was traded to the Phoenix Suns and then later to the Boston Celtics, where he really developed into one of the more underrated scoring point guards in the league. With the Celtics, he was an all-star, averaging 22.2 points and 6.2 assists per game at 26 years old. Thomas' Celtics weren't the flashiest of teams, but with him at the helm, he led them to the Eastern Conference Finals and brought them big numbers every time he was on the floor. Fans were furious when they got rid of him to get Kyrie Irving, which backfired in many ways, and sadly, Thomas never did as good as when he was with the Celtics. But for a time, he was the best thing in the Boston Garden. Number 2, Marc Gasol. Marc Gasol was actually drafted by the Los Angeles Lakers in the second round of the 2007 NBA Draft, 48th overall. He continued to play in Spain through the 2007-2008 season before making his decision to come over to the NBA. But by then, the Lakers had traded his draft rights to the Grizzlies in return for his brother, Pau Gasol. Not a lot was expected of the 24-year-old with good offensive skills, but questionable quickness and defense, but he surpassed those expectations quickly. Gasol averaged 11.9 points as the starting center in his rookie season and eventually transformed himself into an all-star. He was one of the best defensive players in the game after a while, and the Grizzlies were consistently good because of him. But then, he broke through to the next level after getting picked up by the Toronto Raptors. He was their defensive insurance policy and alongside Kawhi Leonard, went and helped the Raptors win the NBA title. He's now with the Lakers in a bid to get a second ring, and you can bet that if they do go and get that ring, Gasol will be a part of it. Number 1, Draymond Green. Probably the best and most famous case of an NBA superstar who came out of nowhere is Draymond Green. He spent 4 years at Michigan State, and when he came out for the 2011 NBA draft, he was considered too short to be a power forward and too big to be a quality small forward. It's a big reason why he lasted until the 5th pick of the second round, and the Golden State Warriors finally selected him. All he's done, Golden State, is win 2 championships with them, help lead the team to the NBA Finals 5 years in a row, be a part of the best regular season team in NBA history, and become an all-star, as well as one of the best defensive presences in all of the NBA. Coach Steve Kerr knows that Draymond is the heart and soul of his team, and the one who motivates them to do better every time they are on the court. Sure, he does get into a lot of trouble via technical fouls, but his team can count on him, and he is a big reason why they won so much for a good stretch of time. So what do you think? What do you think of this look at the NBA players who weren't expected to be overtly good, and then became the talking points of major teams or even MVPs? Can you believe the changes that these players were able to bring to the court in order to make themselves stars? Which of these out-of-nowhere players do you find the most inspiring? Let us know in the comments below, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time on the channel.